lowly paddletail soft plastic. It doesn't make noise, it's not very expensive, it won't call fish up from the depths that erupt in frothy explosions. But if you want to catch fish anywhere along the Gulf Coast, this is the one bait you absolutely have to have in your tackle box. It's produced more speckled trout, redfish than any bait throughout this region. And they all have the same basic design, right? Thicker front, thinner midsection, and a paddle tail designed to grab water and make it dance. But that definitely doesn't mean that they're all created equal, because I can tell you they are certainly not. Some paddle tail soft plastics, regardless of color, will catch more fish than other paddle tail soft plastics. And some are better for certain situations than others. So to see how these baits look underwater, we've collected a bunch of paddle tail soft plastics that we had in our tackle box. We're also going to stop at our local academy and grab some more and head over to the McNeil's, same place where we shot our pool video a couple of weeks ago testing top water plugs. We're going to take the underwater camera and test these paddle tail soft plastics, see how they look both jigged and straight retrieved. This is probably going to tell us more than any pool test we've done yet, and I can't wait to do it. All right, so here's our underwater pole. It's a rake. All right, so I got a dozen different soft plastic paddle tail baits here, and I got them in groups of 2. The reason I got 2 is because I'm gonna do 2 different tests with each one. Do a straight retrieve and also a jig and retrieve. All right, let me see if I can get through these. This is what we got. We've got Egret Wedgetails, Texas Tackle Factory Hackberry Hustlers, H&H Cocahoes, Mirrolure Marsh Minnows, Matrix Shads, Bomber Mud Minnows, Z-Man Minnowz, Saltwater Assassin Sea Shads, H2O Express Thumping Swim Shads, Dudley Jr. Terratails, Egret Bayou Chubs, and last but not least, we got some gulps. I'm leaving these in the package for now because if you ever smell gulp, it doesn't exactly smell very pleasant, so we're gonna leave these in the package until we're ready to use them. All right, first up is the Egret Wedgetail. Now, unlike the topwater video, I'm not really gonna be able to tell how these baits look underwater so much, so we have to rely on that underwater footage and do some commentary when we get home. Now this bait has a forked tail, so I really wasn't sure how it would look underwater, but I have to say I'm impressed. It's a tight wiggle, but still lots of action from that tail. Unfortunately though, that action did not translate to the jigging portion of the test. It looks pretty stiff. Not terrible, but pretty stiff. All right, next up is the Texas Tackle Factory Hackberry Hustler. Let's see how this one looks. All right, as a retrieve bait, the Texas Tackle Factory Hackberry Hustler is pretty unimpressive. But I really like the way this bait looks when it's jigged. If you notice, it kind of almost folds in half. That gives it a tremendous amount of action. All right, this is an extremely popular bait here in South Louisiana, the H&H Cocahoe. Been a mainstay for a long time. Let's see how it looks. Okay, admittedly, I was not expecting much from the H&H Cocahoe. It's a very stiff plastic, but man, this bait looked great on the retrieve. Look at that tail. That's really nice. But the bait, unfortunately, looks pretty stiff when it's being jigged. You got some tail action there on the fall, but it doesn't look all that great. Next up, the Mirrolure Marsh Minnow. Mirrolure, of course, is known for hard plastic baits, but this is one of their soft plastic offerings. See how it looks. All right, this bait I really liked. Some really nice tail action there. It looks like an egg beater behind the lure. And the lure also looks really good on the jig. It kind of folds in half like the Hackberry Hustler. Not to that degree, but still pretty nice. All right, this is a lure that didn't even exist like 6 or 7 years ago, and it's really kind of overtaken the South Louisiana market. It's a matrix shad, very, very popular here in South Louisiana. Excellent tail action, or at least I think it has excellent tail action. We'll see what the underwater camera shows. All right, tail action just does not get any better. I mean, look at this. It's just whipping all over the place. And when jigged, there's a nice lag in the fall. And lots of tail action. Really, really nice bait. All right, so I introed this as a bomber mud minnow. It's actually a young mud minnow. Same company, same bait, just under a different brand name. Very popular, particularly in like the Barataria Basin. Let's see how it looks underwater. All right, the retrieve action on this lure is spectacular. Lots of shimmy in the bait. And that tail's just jumping all over the place. It's a little bit stiffer in the jig portion, but still not bad. Really a nice bait. All right, so this is a Z-Man Minnowz with a Z at the end. Every Z-Man bait has a Z somewhere in it. And this is made of a different plastic, super stretchy. The bad thing with these plastics is you can't mix them with ordinary soft plastics because they dissolve each other. The good thing is they last forever. I mean, it's just difficult for a fish to really tear this thing up. Let's see how it looks underwater. Okay, I had high expectations with this lure, and it really, to be honest, exceeded them. Lots of excellent tail action on both the retrieve portion and the jig portion. And this bait floats, so actually when it's on the bottom, it's standing up with its tail dancing in the current. Next up is a Saltwater Assassin Sea Shad. These baits are also popular here. They're very, very soft. They don't last long, but because they're soft, they probably got really good tail action. Let's see. All right, tail action on the retrieve, it just doesn't get a whole lot better. This bait really looks good. Same thing on the jig portion. You just cannot keep this tail from moving. All right, next up is the H2O Express Thumping Swim Shad. Now this bait is kind of unique in that it has an internal rattle. It's not very loud, but you can definitely hear it in there. Feels kind of stiff, but it does have some pretty good tail action. Let's see if that manifests underwater. All right, this bait was stiff outside the water, and it's definitely stiff underwater. not a whole lot of tail action. There's a little bit of wiggle when it's jigged. But some of the other baits are definitely more impressive. All right, here we got the Dudley Jr. Tail. Now, important when you rig this bait that you push the hook through the rounded side. This bait was designed for the concave side to be down, so when you drop it, it kind of wiggles on the way down. You can see how it looks on the retrieve, though. All right, the tail in this bait did not move at all on the retrieve portion. It looks pretty much like a stick coming through the water. It's a little bit better when it's being jigged, but not a ton. All right, the Egret Bayou Chub. This is a popular bait in South Central Louisiana. Appears to have pretty good tail action, but the underwater test will tell. All right, the skinny midsection of this bait definitely helps his tail to jump around a good bit. That's not bad at all. A little bit of bend in the jig portion. And definitely still that good tail action. Okay, and the last bait we're going to be testing is the Gulp. Definitely the stinkiest one. It's also very, very difficult to rig because the bait comes out of the package wet. Now, I'm not expecting great action out of this, but you really don't necessarily fish this because of the action. You fish it because of the scent. But let's see how it looks anyway. I wasn't expecting much tail action from the Gulp. Man, I was definitely right. This thing looks really stiff. And it doesn't look much better being jigged. Man, what a valuable test. The pool tests always are. But it was so cool seeing those paddle tails underwater and seeing how they perform. Now the scores were just my subjective opinion. So maybe you saw something in those retrieves, in those jigs, that maybe set a particular bait apart. By all means, use that if you think it's going to give you some type of edge. Also, I scored the baits exclusively on price, but obviously value and durability enters into that. For instance, the Z-Man plastics were really, really difficult to destroy. You can catch a whole lot of fish on them. The baits were expensive, so they didn't rate highly on my price quotient, but you may be able to catch 50, 75, 100 fish on one. Now, that doesn't benefit you if you're the type of guy who changes baits every other cast. So keep all that in mind as you review the scores. Listen, right circumstances, each one of these baits is going to produce, no question about it. Well, if you got a lot out of the video, give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe to Marsh Man Masson on YouTube. We will keep the pool tests coming as long as you keep watching them. And heck, if you don't, I'm going to do them anyway, because I learned a ton from each pool test.